Hello, my tiny rhizomes. It's Carla, and I'm here today making pork and beef stew with ginger, kimchi, and tomato. The main reason that this dish even exists as a recipe in That Sounds So Good is because of my love of kimchi jjigae. It's one of my favorite things to get when I have Korean food. It's also was literally the cure for my morning sickness. Ironically, when I was pregnant with Cosmo, I was very queasy all the time, and the only things that made me feel better were the little piece of raw ginger that I carried around in my bag and kimchi jjigae, which you would think if you're a little queasy, like a spicy pork fermented cabbage stew. For me, it was the ultimate pregnancy craving. So I think Cosmo has a love for fermented vegetables because of the amount of kimchi jjigae I had when I was preggers. I'm not a Korean chef. I didn't grow up making kimchi jjigae. So my version is like inspired by those flavors. If you want to make a real kimchi jjigae, find a Korean cooking channel. So on this tray, I have equal parts of beef stew meat and pork stew meat. Ideally, you would take something from the pork shoulder or the butt, which is really the leg. And for the beef, like beef chuck, like something nice and marbled. You want a good amount of fat. This is a recipe from That Sounds So Good. And the philosophy of this book was really based around time and understanding time and like maximizing the efficiency of how you spend your time in the kitchen. These need like 16, 18 minutes to get really beautifully browned on all sides, and I want that flavor payoff. So I'm gonna get them into the pot first. While they are sort of passively, we're checking on them doing their thing, I can do all this chopping. If I did all this chopping and then I started browning the meat, I've added all of the chopping time on top of the browning time. Now they're concurrent. They live like this instead of like this. And it's just efficient. So we're gonna do that. And I'm just gonna have it going behind me. I'm using a large Dutch oven for this because it will be where I build the entire stew. And I want something with a tight fitting lid and great heat retention because ultimately this is gonna braise in the oven. Added a good amount of oil, and I want this pan to be nice and hot before we add the meat. You might have to work in batches. I can tell that I will, because you want all the meat not crowded. Like it can be all in there right next to each other, but we're not crowding the pan. It's gonna be over medium or medium high. I might nudge that down because I want to get really nice even browning and build up the caramelization. So before we get back to my very hot and spicy little kimchi stew, I need to take a moment once again to talk about my breasts. That is correct. We are having another moment to discuss underwire bras specifically. Anyone who knows me knows the underwire bras were burned many, many moons ago, and I did not even think about or dare to wear another underwire bra until I started wearing the Skims Fits Everybody Unlined Demi bra. Unlike every other underwire bra that I ever hated in my life, there is no poking, there is no bagging, there is no gapping, there is no constricting, there is no twisting. And actually, the first time I put it on, I completely forgot that it was an underwire bra because it has none of the underwire bra-y things that have made me so crazy in the past. What it has instead is the ability to show off mom's new tat, which is gorgeous. And when I want to show it, let's talk about the deep, deep V that is happening here. You do not see any of my bra, but I am fully contained and enclosed. And it also has my absolute favorite fabric, this buttery soft, like stretchy, but you don't even feel it situation. It goes way downtown, but is also flat on this part of the boob, which we appreciate. And the straps are not digging in, and it's got my favorite thing about the straps where you can wear them straight or you can take them out, crisscross them to fully feel buttoned down or wear a halter. She can shoot. She can wear a deep V. She can wear a plunging neckline. She can go about the town. She could also wear a regular old t-shirt. I could shoot videos. I could go dancing. Everything is going to be great because of this bra. I'm never going to be mad at it. And if I'm not mad at my bra, I'm not going to be mad at other people in my life. So really this is making me a more harmonious person, and it is also contributing to harmony in the world. Shop for this bra and all the other Fits Everybody bras in the collection at skims.com/Carla. These bras are now available in 62 sizes, from 30A to 42H, which is an incredible inclusivity, and we really do love to see it. When you go and place your order, make sure when you check out to choose YouTube in the little drop-down survey, and then choose my channel, Carla's Cooking Show, so that they know I sent you. The three of us sent you. So there's quite a bit of scallion. That's really the base of the aromatics, and a little bit of ginger. These are gorgeous because scallions are in season right now. I'm gonna just kind of clean up the tops. I'll use some of this for garnish later, but as far as the rest of the scallion goes, I do want the greens and the whites. Let's see, what did I say? Thinly slice the scallions. Okay, whatever that means to you. It's gonna get braised, so like they don't need to be tiny. 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. It's funny to look back on my recipes now. I mean, I wrote this book during the pandemic, and I don't really remember that version of myself, frankly. It's like a fever dream. And so when I look back on my own recipes, and I hope that you would do this as well, like, I don't know, I do things differently now. And also could do things a little bit differently today, and then make it a different day 3 weeks from now, and change something else up based on what I have in the house. So thinly slicing something that is going to be braised, I don't know what I was thinking. Doesn't make a ton of sense, but here we are. And if you want to like practice your knife skills, we have greens for garnish, and we can go really thin for those. I just got my knives sharpened at Corinne. I was really like, I had a lot of guilt and shame about the fact that my knives weren't sharp, because I feel like as a professional or whatever I am, that I should be sharpening my own knives. I know how to do it, and it's like I have a whetstone. It's kind of like answering that email that you never want to answer. I could answer it, but then I just end up looking at it for a really long time and feeling bad about it. And that's what happened with my knives. And then my darling child was like,
I'm going to Corinne, Mom. Do you want me to bring your knives in for you and have them sharpen all of them?
That's the other thing. I don't trust just any knife sharpener. That's the thing. I'm like, no, my knives are way too special to let anybody sharpen them. So just let them be dull at home. They're not hurting anybody. In the recipe, it says a 2-inch piece of ginger. This is some gorgeous young ginger that I got at the farmer's market from Lalli's produce. And because it's younger, it's not dried, it has like a lighter, fresher, more aromatic flavor, and I can use more of it. It's not going to overwhelm. So we're taking that liberty as well. The meat is fine. I've been cooking in this kitchen for my entire adult life, and so I've gotten pretty good at listening to things that are happening behind me when I can't always be looking at them. And I can hear a lot of steamy noise and a lot of juicy noise. And I can also hear the like pace at which things are going along. I think I can get through cutting this ginger before I have to turn around and check. But we're gonna check. Okay, the ginger and the scallion are gonna go into the stew at the same time, so they can go into this bowl together. I can also smell what's happening with the meat. So if I start to smell like a scorchy, smoky smell, that's a signal that you might want to turn your body around. But I'm just smelling like browning, lovely browning. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna keep it over by the stove for later. And yeah, let's look at the meats. So when you have something like a cubed piece of meat, and I say to brown it on all sides. That's like all 6 sides. And I want to keep turning them, and that is part of this browning process. That's also part of why the heat isn't on too high, because if it were, the pan would start to scorch and have a burnt flavor, and then you would like need to get everything out of there, basically. Okay, so now I have a full jar of kimchi. I'm gonna use the liquid of the kimchi and the liquid of the tomato as part of the deglazing for after all the aromatics are in. I also happen to remember that I have a half a can of sake in my freezer, which was unusual because I did not finish it the other night. So let's put that over there so we don't forget about it. Full jar of kimchi, and I'm just gonna press out a bunch of the liquid. I can see it bubbling. Use whatever kimchi you like, whatever brand. Some are more funky, more aged, some are more fresh. This is a cabbage kimchi. I don't think I would use like a radish kimchi in this because I think it could get too like farty aroma. So that's just to capture that. And instead of dumping the kimchi out on my board, which is I think what I did when I wrote the recipe, I'm just gonna go into the jar using my kitchen shears and cut the kimchi into about 1/2-inch pieces. I think the reason I might not have scissored the jar initially was because at that stage in my life, like maybe I wasn't using a whole jar of kimchi that often. And like you really only do this if you're gonna take the whole jar down at once. So yeah, now we have entered the scissoring era. Similarly, I have one of the smaller cans of whole peeled tomatoes, and I'm gonna drain off a lot of that tomato liquid. I feel like we didn't really need the strainer, but that's cool. So maybe I'll just like add the sake to that. And then the recipe says to tear the tomatoes, but like why? We're in our scissoring era. We don't do that anymore. Great. Now that I've upended some of the meat on their like side surfaces, it's created space in the pan, which I want to fill with more of the meat. That's gonna save me time, but it's also going to do another important thing, which is filling in those hot spots where there's just hot oil now because the meat is on its side. And like heat creates heat. So if I leave like a hot oil pocket open, it could get too hot and start to scorch. I can tell that Susie Theodoro, the food stylist on That Sounds So Good, needed to see some color because the recipe says serve with rice, but the picture is served with beautiful strands of scallion, which technically should have said reserve some of the greens for garnish, and I did not. So we are now gonna attempt not making rings, but doing the like long scallion things, and then we can put them in the cold water and try to get them to curl. Let's see if she can do it. I mean, she can. This is like one of those things I just frankly lack the patience for. But we do have the sharp knife, so I wonder if I can fold them in half. See, this is how you know Carla's not a food stylist. We love a food stylist, and we recognize in ourselves that there are other things that we're better at, like scissoring. Shout out to all the scissoring moms. If you're watching, please drop a leg emoji and a scissor emoji in the comments, because we see you. I was gonna say something about my own mom, but I'm just gonna leave that there. See, like, this one is shit, and like, that one's incredible, but all shapes of scallions are welcome here. Okay, cold water. You can do this with thinly sliced onion, and you can do this also with thinly sliced carrot, and then put it in the water, in ice water, and it'll curl up and be a cute garnish. That's it. So right into these rendered pork and beef drippings goes our scallion ginger situation. I'm not draining any of the fat because it's gonna make it taste really good. If you did have a little scorching on your meat cooking stage, you wanna just take a look at that, wipe out anything that may have been burned, so that you don't have a burn flavor in your stew. But all of the liquid that's gonna get released from the scallion and the ginger is gonna start to deglaze, and you're gonna be able to pull up these nice brown bits. I'm gonna let this cook until the scallions and the ginger have taken on some nice brown color, so six-ish minutes, but keep an eye on it, adjust the flame as needed, and it's making the kitchen smell insane. Now that I've achieved brownness, I'm gonna start building more flavor into the base. So starting with a full tablespoon of gochugaru, which is the same dried chili that's used to make kimchi. So it's really gonna like amp up that spicy red chili flavor without, you know, the flavor of the fermented funkiness that is in the finished kimchi. A few anchovies. So this is where like I start to really divert from an actual Korean stew, which would be made with dried anchovies in a broth that you make stock from. So in order to kind of just like get the essence of that, I'm using regular salted and jarred anchovies, 3 fillets. And these vegetables have released their own sugars and started to create like more browning in the pan. So even though the liquid from them like loosened up the meat crystals, now we have like veggie crystals. So I'm gonna use the liquids, my bonus half can of sake, and the liquid I drained from the tomato and the kimchi. So now I'm gonna reduce that liquid a little bit, just a couple of minutes, and then we can go back in with our solids and the meats. This is where everybody comes together. My brown meats, along with any liquid that's accumulated in the pan, all those good meaty juices, going back in. The whole jar of kimchi, chopped and scissored, plus the pieces of tomato. And then I'm going to use my kimchi jar and my tomato jar to add liquid to come 3/4 of the way up. I haven't added any salt to this, with the exception of salting the meat. Kimchi, as a preserved fermented vegetable, is salted, so there is a good amount of saltiness. Then we also had anchovies going in, but before I put it in the oven, I want it to come to a simmer. I'm going to take this chance to taste it, adjust anything that needs to be adjusted. It's quite evocative. It's that gochugaru, ginger scallion, meaty flavor. It's already very tasty liquid. So I don't want to put it into the oven, which is at 325, until the liquid simmers. If you put it in right now before it's come up, at 325, it's gonna take so long for it to hit a simmer in the oven. It's just gonna really drag down the cooking time. So once it hits a simmer, I can cover it and put it in. I'm not adding anything to it. It tastes actually so good, and it's gonna get more concentrated as it goes. After about 1.5 to 2 hours of braising time in the oven, what I'm looking for is like shreddable meats. So I did just push on that with my wooden spoon. Let's do that again in a way that y'all at home can see it. So I don't know if this was a little bit of pork or if it is beef, but just using the spoon, and it's like really shreddy. If you want to, you can like shred the meat in the pot. It doesn't bother me to have like nice big pieces of meat in my stew, just knowing that I can serve it with a spoon and just smush everything. So I'm right into my bowl, and it's delicious and molten and like so warming. I also love this as a fall dish for when the nights are getting chilly and you want something warming. The other thing that's great about this is, like all braises, it gets better if it sits for a day. So you can make it and chill it, and then the next day, scrape off any fat that's come and solidified on the top and just heat up what you want. It will also freeze incredibly well. We're gonna try to salvage, without embarrassing oneself, some curly scallions. Those are nice. See how they curl up in the ice water? Thanks to Zojirushi, the greatest rice cooker of all time, I have perfect short grain white rice, fluffy, and this is the way that I like to do it. You could go back and forth, but I love rice so much that I like to take the rice on the spoon and then dip it into the stew, and that's like for soaking up the broth. It's spicy, tangy, it's rich, it's meaty, but like the tomato keeps it feeling light. Like it doesn't feel like a heavy, like gravy beef stew. It still feels very kind of vibrant and juicy and like a lot of high notes from the pickled vegetable and the acidic tomato and this broth that is really just liquid from the beef, a little tomato and a little kimchi juice. I'm gonna eat this whole bowl. Plus gut health from all the kimchi. Restorative, healthful, good bacteria, great amount of protein, very hands-off, very easy. This is the kind of stew that I could really get behind. I didn't cut myself, but I cut into my manicure. Meh. Now I'm mad.